When we think about voting, it's not just a right, it's a responsibility.
And I would really like to see this bond work towards making it so that public servants and professionals can afford to live where they work.
Good evening, I'm Judy Maggio. Tonight on Decibel, your voice, your vote. The much-anticipated midterm elections are almost here. While elections during non-presidential years tend to attract fewer voters, the blockbuster battle between Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke is firing up people in both parties. We've also seen renewed efforts to register more people, especially young voters and Latinos. Travis County has signed up a record number of potential voters, but will it make a difference at the polls? We begin tonight with Decibel's Blair Waltman-Alexin.
How are y'all? Good morning.
It's homecoming week at McNeil High School, and the senior class is gathering for a pep rally. But this isn't about school spirit. It's about civic spirit.
You excited about voting? Now, come on. This is a voter pep rally. McNeil, are you excited about voting? There we go. All right, so if you... Today we were doing some of our first ever voter pep rallies, and we're just trying to get the kids excited and educated about voting. Brought the legal women voters to do voter registration, talked to them about what they're gonna see on the ballot, had a sample voting machine. So it's a really great opportunity for these kids to engage.
We want you to register, man.
Most of the kids, they care about their communities, and they just need to know that their voices matter and that they need to participate. We need them to participate.
Austin City Councilman Jimmy Flanagan isn't the only one ginning up interest for the midterms. There have been all sorts of events across town trying to get people engaged in the election. Bars and restaurants have hosted debate watch parties. There have been local candidate debates with happy hours. Even at the Austin City Limits Music Festival, the push to get out the vote was evident. But Texas has some of the worst voter turnout in the nation. So is all of this enough to actually get Texans to go vote?
Register to vote! The answer to should you is always yes. Today is the last day to register to vote here in Texas. And on campus, we're trying to get the number up to at least 30 to 35% turnout on campus, which doesn't sound like a lot, but you gotta remember that in 2014, student turnout was 18%, which pretty much mirrors what it's like for young people nationwide. So going from that to 30 would be a massive jump.
During early voting, I definitely recommend doing that because
Just today, we have a stack like this big of voter registration cards. I mean, what we're seeing with students, I mean, there's just a general knowledge that there is something happening.
It actually is mind-boggling. We are set to break that record.
Gretchen Nagy is the director of voter registration for Travis County. She's talking about the voter registration record for the county that was set in 2016. Or should I say the previous record?
2 years ago, we actually were at 92.6%. As of today, we have 776,000 registered voters in Travis County, and that is equal to 93%.
She says some of that boost has to do with one race in particular. You may have heard about it.
Senator Cruz is not going to be honest with you. He's dishonest. That's why the president called him Lying Ted.
It's clear Congressman O'Rourke's pollsters have told him to come out on the attack. So if he wants to insult me and call me a liar, that's fine.
Yep, the race between Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke.
We do not generally have a U.S. Senate race in a midterm, so there's more interest. We are phase one of this election process. Phase two is now turning out and is going to vote.
The problem is turning out to vote isn't something Texans do, especially for midterms. One nationwide study ranked the state dead last in midterm participation.
Generally, we're near the bottom. People argue about what the explanation for that is. Part of it is we're a very young state. Part of it is that we have a state with a significant Latino population. Latinos as a group have lower turnout rates. Registration and the voting rules are definitely a factor. If you step back and think about it from an academic perspective, almost everything you do to increase the costs and time and effort of voting are likely to reduce voter turnout. The voter registration rules in Texas are relatively strict. The voter ID rules, as we know, are relatively strict. But I think it is fair to say that it could be a lot easier to vote in Texas, and if it was, you would see increased voter turnout.
The way in which voting operates or registering to vote is that it's not easy. It's not a modern sort of technology the same way you do things on your phone.
Val Benavides is with the Texas Freedom Network, and their program Texas Rising focuses on registering younger voters. And this has been the main argument of many groups. Voter turnout, especially younger voter turnout, is low because the system is old and cumbersome. Nevertheless, groups have been pushing hard to get young voters registered and to the polls.
In Texas, under 30s are the fastest growing population. Over the next 4 to 5 years, they will be close to 1/3 of that entire electorate. So it's a huge amount of people who need to be civically engaged.
But will it work? Will all the registration drives and events and happy hours bring more Texans to the polls this year? If early voting is any indication, the answer is yes. Travis and other major counties across the state are seeing record-breaking early voting. If the numbers hold, it looks like enthusiasm may have turned into participation, something Flanagan was hoping for back at the registration pep rally.
I'm excited about getting these kids registered to vote, but I'm more excited about getting them to vote. And what will really count is who shows up to the polls starting October 22nd.
One group organizers hope show up at the polls this year are Latino voters.
We don't have enough attention being paid to the Latino vote, which is a very important element because in many of these elections that are happening around the country where you have a Latino population, Latino voters actually decide the vote.
So if we can even get just a couple of candidates on here, that's ideal.
Aaron Arguello is prepping volunteer vote canvassers. They're targeting a predominantly Latino neighborhood in far northeast Austin.
Voters who are registered but aren't always out there, Maybe they voted one time in the last few elections, things like that.
There are 11.1 million Latinos in Texas, roughly 39% of the population. Democrats need them if they're ever going to regain political power in the state. Right now, Republicans have the majority of white voters locked in.
If the Latino vote gradually increases, the likelihood is that Republicans are still going to retain some significant share of it based on what we know about the political and sociological profiles of Latinos in Texas. If you grew up in Texas, being Latino doesn't magically insulate you from absorbing some of the more conservative elements of political culture in the state. Latinos are part of the solution to the Democratic doldrums. But I also think that it's almost requiring Latinos to carry a sort of, unreasonable share of the burden.
The other issue with mobilizing Latinos is they have traditionally low voter turnout at the polls. That's why Aaron is hoping the door-to-door vote canvassing will help.
A lot of the people who are registered but aren't voting are Latinos. A lot of them feel pretty disenfranchised by what they've seen from, elections. Don't feel like there's a lot that can be changed from them, and we're just there to remind them that if we can all get out there, there is definitely some change that can be made.
It's the same message delivered by Dolores Huerta as she rallied the troops in East Austin several weeks ago. The legendary civil rights leader says Latino voters have untapped power and they need to use it.
And often the Latino community, either number one, they don't think that their vote counts. They don't think that their vote is important. The whole issue is that we have to try to remind Latinos that they have this power and that they have this influence and that they are the ones that can make the difference in so many of these elections.
While people of color are finding a louder voice in politics, so are women, and it's long overdue. Since the first Congress back in 1789, only 3% of America's leaders have been women. But this year, a pink wave is rolling in, and a record number of women are running for office. Here in Texas, a hill country grandmother helped get the ball rolling.
I walked out the front door of the Capitol, and all you could see was a sea of people. Both estimates were well over 100,000 people showed up.
Oatmeal, Texas. It's an unlikely headquarters for a history-making march, but this hill country home is where Melissa Fierro rallied the troops through Facebook.
Several times, and I just think at least the best. I was a grandmother sitting in Oatmeal, Texas, and ended up organizing with a lot of help from a lot of other people, the largest march in Texas history. So I think that women need to hear the story that people run for office. There's nobody super special that needs to run for office. You just have to have the desire.
The momentum of the march in Austin and across the country helped fuel a political movement.
They realized that there was power in numbers and that there were numbers. You know, they weren't alone, and that everyday people can step up.
In the 2018 midterm election, an unprecedented number of women are running for the U.S. House, where Democrats are hoping to regain control. Though women make up half of the U.S. population, they only hold 20% of the seats in Congress, and a mere 38 of those spots are held by women of color. Considering the diverse field of women coming out of the woodwork to make a bid for Congress, the face of politics is poised to change, and Texas could end a 22-year dry spell.
I first volunteered on a campaign in the 1996 election cycle for a woman named Olivia Udaley. It was my first taste of a congressional campaign. That year, 96, was the last time a new woman was elected to Congress.
Jennifer Sarver is a moderate Republican who lost her primary bid for the 21st House District, but she is still confident the timing is right for more women to have a seat at the table.
We're only going to be treated equal if we start to have a level playing field. And so I think it's going to take a long time before we reach any sort of gender parity in politics, but the surge of women does give me hope.
3/4 of the women vying for seats in the House are Democrats. MJ Hagar is an Air Force veteran trying to unseat longtime Republican House member John Carter in a reliably red House District 31.
Well, it was good to meet you. Thank you for the support.
Hagar's campaign video went viral and caught the attention of the nation. She served 3 tours in Afghanistan. In 2009, she saved the lives of her passengers after her medevac helicopter was shot down.
That got me a Purple Heart, and I became the second woman ever awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross with Valor. But after that, the door closed. Injured and unable to fly, I was barred from my next career choice because I was a woman.
Hagar also won a 2012 lawsuit against the U.S. Defense Department over its policy of excluding women from combat positions.
Legislation impacts culture. So legislating that women are second class or not as good sends a message and contributes to a culture where women get victimized, where they have high rates of sexual assault against them, where they are just treated as second-class citizens.
In the past, the hardest part of getting women elected to office was convincing them to run. But a pink wave of candidates is rolling across the country in 2018, and that makes one grandmother in Oatmeal, Texas, swell with pride.
There are going to be a lot of women elected to office in Texas this go-round. And I think that's going to make a difference in how our government works from local, city, and county level all the way up. Big changes are coming in 2018, but they're just the start, and we've got to stick with it. I think that's important.
There's no doubt the 2 men at the top of your ballot, Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke, are attracting the most attention. But when it comes to the quality of everyday life in Austin, it's those issues and races towards the bottom of your ballot that will have the most impact. We had a little fun breaking down the $925 million Austin bond package.
In November, Austinites will vote on a $925 million bond package.
But how is that divvied up, and what are we paying for?
And what are we paying for?
And what are we paying for?
At the top of the bond ballot, $250 million for affordable housing. It's the biggest housing bond ever put before city voters, and it's meant to allow more people to actually stay in the city limits instead of being pushed out by the high cost of housing.
$160 million goes to transportation. So rather than build new infrastructure, this money would go to repair things like roads, bridges, and sidewalks. But also, a lot of that money would be used to pay for a new bridge over Redbud Isle. A notion that not everybody's thrilled about, since many people who use the bridge live west of the lake and don't pay City of Austin taxes. $149 million for parks and facilities. And a good chunk of that money will help repair some of Austin's leakiest pools.
$128 million for libraries and cultural centers. Shh, geez, all right. This will get divided between several cultural centers around town, including the Asian American Resource Center and the George Washington Carver Museum. Roughly $34 million will go towards converting the old Central Public Library into a place where the Austin History Center can house its archives.
$184 million for flood mitigation and open space. Areas of Austin are prone to flooding, Waller Creek, for example. In the past, the city has purchased homes that have continuously flooded. This money would pay for additional buyouts, plus buying open space, and paying for drainage improvements.
$38 million will go to public safety. That money will go to the Austin Fire Department and EMS to renovate their stations. $16 million for Health and Human Services. $16 million for Health and Human Services. That bond will fund a public health center in Southeast Austin in the Dove Springs neighborhood. All 7 bonds are on the November ballot in Austin. You've probably heard the most about Prop A. City leaders and nonprofits are rallying behind the affordable housing bond. We found the perfect person to show you the potential of Prop A for middle and low-income Austinites.
I don't think any teacher teaches unless you just absolutely love children. That's just the only way that you could do a job that's this hard, that's so underpaid. I'm really just excited to not be struggling.
What is that? Let's talk about it. Monochromatic is a super big word.
Jessica Foster loves her job teaching art at Barbara Jordan Elementary, but she doesn't love her long commute and mounting debt.
At this point in my life, between my incredibly expensive rent that I pay, on top of my student loans, on top of all of the gas that it costs just to get to work because I live so far away, and then groceries, I really don't have extra money to afford anything. So if my car needs a repair, it goes on my credit card. If I want to go somewhere or do anything, it goes on my credit card. So I just feel really trapped.
Some of Jessica's colleagues have left their Austin teaching jobs because they can't handle the high cost of housing here. Even her principal, a lifelong Austinite, now calls Pflugerville home.
I feel like I love the community that I serve every single day. My husband's a firefighter and he serves our community every single day, but we just can't afford to live here. It is frustrating that the communities that you work in and that you serve daily, you just can't afford it.
It's a frustration felt by thousands of people from all walks of life across the city. Jessica is hopeful Austin's affordable housing bond will help.
And I think that being able to afford to live in the communities that you serve as a teacher is really, really important. And I would really like to see this bond and any affordable housing pushes in the future work towards making it so that public servants and professionals can afford to live where they work, because that's what builds strong communities. And without strong communities, you know, what even is a city?
Prop A is at the top of Austin's bond ballot. It's $250 million to attack affordable housing issues from different fronts: buying land, building affordable housing, home repair, and help with rent. Critics say it's too little, too late.
The topic that is on everybody's mind is the affordable housing, and that was something that...
Dr. Yasmin Irizarry is on the city's task force that drew up the bonds.
Every movement began with a drop in a bucket, and so when I hear things like that, I go, but that's how everything starts. A world-class pianist started with a drop in a bucket. They could only play maybe The Entertainer, who knows, right? So the idea that starting small, that if we don't start large, we can't start at all, is problematic, because then we never even begin, right? You never even begin to fill the bucket.
Who here is yay on Prop A? Yeah. Who here is yay on Prop A? Yeah. Let's do it.
It's not just politicians rallying the troops for Prop A. Many local nonprofits are campaigning for it because their programs and the people they serve will benefit in a big way.
It's huge. Our challenge is land.
the rising land cost and the competition to buy land. So if we can get some help on just getting the land, then we can put a house there. We can put a family there, permanent, affordable structure. So that's our goal.
Habitat for Humanity has been on the front lines of the fight for affordable housing for decades. Right now, local volunteers are building a group of small homes on donated land in far northeast Austin.
Okay, are you ready?
Jessica's one of them. She knows all about the hundreds of volunteer hours required when you qualify for a Habitat home. You see, Jessica grew up in one, along with her mother and 5 siblings.
Yeah, I was 9 years old when we first started building, 10 years old when we moved in, and everything changed. I mean, it was not just that all of a sudden we had a house where we only had to have 2 to a bedroom instead of, more, but all of a sudden we lived in town. The fact that we could play with friends or do after-school programs because our house was close enough that we could walk or ride our bikes or my mom could pick us up if needed just absolutely changed the trajectory of my life.
But there's another reason Jessica's wearing her hard hat on the weekends.
So the driveway will be somewhere here, and I'll have like a little front garden. And then over here is my porch.
She's putting in the sweat equity for her own Habitat home, just down the street from Barbara Jordan Elementary.
I mean, it's 3 blocks away. I can almost see my school, from my front porch. And what's really cool is I'm starting to get to meet my neighbors through building, and I'm getting to not just meet the neighbors, but meet their children who will be my future students. So that's really, really cool. And so we're really excited because Habitat for Humanity is going to help me build a house.
It's also cool that her students are learning some important life lessons along with art.
And so guess what, Ms. Foster, I am getting a house, and it's going to be right next to Gus Garcia. So I'm gonna live in your guys' neighborhood. Isn't that so exciting? Well, you can't come live in my house all the time, but maybe you can come visit. Maybe you can come hang out on my front porch. So
Jessica's new house should be ready for move-in early next year.
People like me, teachers, can't afford.
Just a few weeks ago, this stage in Studio 6A was the site of the 2018 Austin Mayoral Forum. All 7 people running for mayor debated the issues for an hour. One big difference between the 2 frontrunners is how they want to handle the rewrite of Austin's land use code.
We had a priority that was abandoned, that it would be a priority that families could stay in their homes. We need to make that at the top. But I believe that we need to divide things into smaller chunks. We need to do planning at a smaller level, have targets for the amount of growth we'll accommodate in each of the districts, have targets for how we accommodate a certain amount of affordability in each of the districts, and ask the community for the answers.
Under the existing code now, we have gentrification, we have localized flooding, we have traffic issues, and while redoing the code isn't going to be the thing that solves all those challenges, it's an important tool and it has to happen.
Besides the mayor's race, 4 seats on the Austin City Council are on the ballot. We want to end tonight with some non-election news as we head into November because it is also National Native American Heritage Month. The Great Promise for American Indians performers took center stage at the Texas State History Museum recently to showcase traditional Native American dances that are part of a living history.
Who's excited to be here today? Who's excited? All right.
Today is a celebration of Texas American Indian Heritage Day, and it's an official day recognized by the state, and it's meant to celebrate the past contributions, culture, and history of Native people, and also celebrate modern Native American people and culture.
You got a song ready? Let's do grass dance.
The kids get quite a bit of information in their classroom about the history of Native peoples, but we're trying to emphasize that Native peoples are still here and their culture, their dances, their songs are very relevant. They haven't gone away, they're still here.
Oh, isn't that beautiful? Let's give them a big hand.
That's all they see are the pictures from a long time ago, so seeing us in bright colors, I always like to joke with them saying, yeah, back then we had to trade for our materials, but now I can just go to Joann's or Hobby Lobby. This isn't a costume, you know, we're not playing dress up for Halloween. This is a regalia, it's, you know, traditional to our tribes. It's important to pass it down to the next generation. We don't want to see us, you know, it die out.
It's the identity of who people are. It's not only the past, it's not only traditions from long ago, but they're traditions of today.
If you enjoyed tonight's Decibel special, be sure to like our Facebook page where we premiere our stories. Thanks so much for giving us your time this evening, and don't forget to go vote. Good night.